Welcome to the Chicago Bears Podcast, a presentation of ESPN Chicago, Chicago's home for sports. Here's your host, Pat, the designer.
Bird on Bears fans, welcome into another edition of the Chicago Bears Podcast. Pat, the designer, in the building. Courtney Cronin, literally in the building. She was there for minicamp today. We'll get all the insight on minicamp. Also hearing from what the Chicago Bears are talking about. Coach Eberflus spoke at the podium today. Justin Jones, Nate Davis, Eddie Jackson. We'll get into all that. And then Waukegan throwing their hat in the ring. I'm from North Chicago. Waukegan? All that more in today's episode of the Chicago Bears Podcast. Let's get into the show. Courtney, first things first, how are you today?
You know, we're good. Minicamp's here. It means that the finish line's in sight, and you get to finally see a little bit more of the team stuff that you didn't get to see during OTAs. So it's coming together, but I also have to caution people, it's June. You cannot overreact to what you're seeing on the field right now.
But it's an overreaction Tuesday. It's what we do.
Is that what we're calling today? Okay.
I think any day that the Bears do anything is an overreaction, whatever that day is.
That's fair. That's fair. I mean, that's what you get at this time of year, and people want to see live action. I think that it's hard to judge where this team is, truly, and even Matt Eberflus talked about that today, just with the fact that they're not in pads means that, it's hard to tell where the offensive line is. It's hard to tell just how effective the pass rush is, but we're getting closer. We're getting closer to that point when they actually put pads on, but I am in the minority. I want the next 6 weeks to creep by until we get to training camp.
Yeah, no, you are definitely in the minority for very different reasons, though. You have to be there every day. So it makes a little bit of a difference. First things first, shout out to the mic guy today in the press conferences. He did a good job. He was great today. Heard all the questions from the reporters, from you. It was all left-sided, though. We do got to figure out what's going on. Now, with the audio guy sending the audio out, it only comes through one headphone, and that's all you see in the chat on that side. But when Flus was talking, I thought that there was a lot of good that we heard from Coach Flus today, especially about one young man who, apparently is just taking both OTAs and minicamp by storm in Tyrique Stevenson. We heard Flus talk at the podium today about the impact that Tyrique Stevenson has and how he's playing as a competitor. Let's listen in real quick.
You defensively, what are you looking at with Tyrique Stevenson right now, and what has he done to kind of earn some trust here early on?
He's really showed what he showed in college. Really good ball skills, length, instincts, competitive. He's shown all those things, and he's had a couple nice interceptions during the course of this off season. And now it's just about him going in. I know he's going back home to train in the summer. About him getting in an elite shape to make sure he can compete like he wants to.
How would you describe kind of that competitive confidence that he has?
Yeah, it's a little bit ahead, I would say. It seems more like a veteran to me than it does a rookie, which is kind of cool to be able to watch that. And he's very confident. I think the guys gravitate towards him. He's a likable guy because he does love football, and he is competitive. And so I think he fits well with Gordon and Brisker and Eddie, all those guys that are really competitive, that like to grind it and like to practice.
Now, Courtney, you've been there. You've seen this guy in action. What does Tyrique Stevenson look like? Does he, like Flus said, look like that guy who's already up to somewhat of a veteran level when he's out there competing?
Yeah, it's not the first time we've heard comments like this. I remember going back to rookie minicamp, and you hear the initial impressions of their second round rookie that his, football EQ, IQ, whatever you want to call it, is not at that of a rookie level. It's significantly higher. And then you hear what Matt Eberflus said, that the confidence factor, which you need to play to be a defensive back, you've got to have that fearless, almost sort of reckless confidence at times to be able to play that sort of position, to be able to play press man and all these techniques that require you to be up in someone's face.
Yeah.
He has all of that. And that's probably a major part of the reason why he was a second round pick to begin with. And I'm sure some guys come in with that, but as rookies, there's probably a steeper curve. But with him and what we're seeing right now, it feels like that has definitely been something he's already been able to get a hold of pretty well. So what I saw today, I was watching, we were indoors because it was raining. I watched the cornerback group during individuals. They were right in front of us, and he and Jalen Johnson were communicating the entire time. I could see him asking questions. I could see him, kind of shadowing some technique of the veteran cornerback. And it's good to see the guy that you're probably starting opposite of this fall, that you're already starting to get on the same page and build that rapport and be comfortable knowing that you can ask a question, but like that no questions are bad questions, because Tyrique Stevenson is going to be tasked with a mountain of work if he ends up earning the starting spot in this defense, which he is very clearly on the trajectory to do. And you got to be comfortable knowing, hey, we're all kind of in this together on the back end of the defense. I got to make sure that I'm on the same page as Kyler Gordon, and he's on the same page as me, and I'm on the same page as Jalen Johnson, and everybody's kind of working in unison. So those things are all really important, and it's good to start to see those bonds on the field get put into place, early on, because that's how you get the sort of moments like we saw, right off the bat last year with the forced fumble in the in the south end zone with Jalen Johnson and Jaquan Brisker, first, quarter of the 2022 season. You have two guys that are on the same page, a rookie and a veteran player working together. Like, that's what the Bears hope. This is a defense that's predicated on takeaways. So to have one of your cornerbacks, already showing he's very capable of doing that. He's a ball hawk by nature, but also that he has the intelligence to know kind of when to push it and when to reel it back. Like, that's a good sign that the coaches can already tell, and they don't have to like drive that out of him. It's already a pretty natural thing for him.
It's tell me if I'm reading too much into this at this point, right? Overreaction Tuesday. That's what we're calling this. But when he gets into, breaking down who he fits well with competitively, he says Gordon, Brisker, and Eddie. There is a very key name missing from there. Am I reading too much into this, or is there something to be said about maybe the relationship coming into camp between Jalen Johnson and Coach Flus?
I explain it in the context again that he feels like he fits well with.
So he said basically, when he goes out, when you see him competitively, he fits well competitively with guys like Gordon, with Brisker, with Eddie, going out there. Mm-hmm. And the first thing that I thought of was he doesn't fit well competitively with Jalen Johnson, or what are we talking about here? But I was like, am I just reading too much into this? Am I, is this what is it called? Leftovers from overthinking it, right? From minicamp and all of that, or what do you think?
I think it was the fact that, that was Tyrique Stevenson who said that. So I think it's just the fact that Jalen Johnson wasn't there yet. The last time we heard from Tyrique Stevenson as a group was rookie minicamp. So there's definitely been, there's been some time where he's had a chance to get in this defense, and Jalen Johnson's been back for a week. So I think that there isn't too much to really put stock into just with that quote just yet, because come hell or high water, they're going to have to fit well together.
He's got to play.
And right now, I think they're in a very much like the learning each other, feeling it out phase. But that doesn't mean that can't get expedited over the next 6 to 8 weeks. And Flus had mentioned today with Tyrique Stevenson, like, he knows his plan. He knows he's going home to work for the next couple weeks before they all come back for training camp. And I think Bears fans should feel pretty good about the state of the secondary. You have Jalen Johnson back. Doesn't feel like there's going to be any sort of holdout. Feels like the contract extension and those talks are going to be in process before long. And then, of course, Eddie Jackson coming back and, knowing that he did not have to have surgery for his Liz Frank injury, and that's not like delaying the process. It was his goal to get here for minicamp, and he's here. So great sign there. Kyler Gordon today had a pick during 11-on-11. It was a little bit of an overthrown ball intended for Cole Kmet, who I think tripped on the play, but the things are coming together. And then when you see Tyrique Stevenson as a rookie making plays early on, that's a sign of confidence that the front office may, likely got this right and found somebody who's going to be a good fit in this defense.
When you see, right, we heard that the second team defense seemed to get better of the offense a little bit more today. Is that just right because of where we're at in minicamp, right? He talked about not having pads on. It makes it a lot harder for protection and things like that to be held up by the offensive line. The defense is expected to be a little bit ahead of the offense at this point, but what did you see on that when you were out there observing?
Yeah, it usually is. I think that it's an up and down day for the offense today. I mean, the offensive line, it's hard to tell when you can't really go full force and block because you don't have pads on. And anytime there's a pressure sack when it's training camp or it's mini camp OTAs, it's going to look like, wow, the pass rush looks great. Like, look, this guy just got, Terrell Lewis got past Darnell Wright. And I think Braxton Jones got beat on what would be a quote unquote sack. Like, to take it with a grain of salt. I mean, it's certainly a good sign that you have, at least as of right now, what looks like pass rushers who will be capable of that. But I also think that you have to hit the pause button and say, okay, like this defensive line is not a finished product right now. They do need an edge rusher, and it would be wise for them probably, seeing as the market's drying up. I mean, someone like Unique Ngakoue is still sitting out there. Like, I think you can't put a whole ton of stock into everything that you see. It's good to see the connection between DJ Moore and Justin Fields. And I know Justin Jones, when I asked him about the offense, because he was very vocal about the offense earlier in the offseason. And so I asked him about it again, like the fact that you have players bringing that up without being prompted, like specifically Justin Fields and DJ Moore, that's a really good sign. But I expect these sorts of days, where it really does get concerning in mini camp or even, certainly training camp, because the season is so close at that point, when you start to see it take place in the red zone. And of course, remember last year, there were a couple red zone days that I'm sure the Bears offense wishes they could forget, because there's turnovers, there's, interceptions, there's just like a lack of communication, or just lack of everybody firing on the same cylinder. And that's a problem. Early on, I mean, they were indoors today. It's just, I'm not surprised that there are some hiccups there, but I don't anticipate that you can really go fully in depth on, okay, wow, like this is the product, because it's June 13th right now. It's definitely not a finished product by any stretch. And it probably won't look like that even when you and I are talking 2 days from now, talking about our biggest takeaways from minicamp. We're just not going to be there yet.
When you talked about kind of like how this offense is developing and the offensive line as a whole, we heard that Cody Whitehair is a guy who has basically he is the starter. That's what Flu said. He's like, he's the starter. How are they utilizing Lucas Patrick? Because Lucas Patrick is a guy that could play multiple positions, but again, last season he was brought here to be that starting center, and it seems like that job is just nowhere for him to be able to win it. Flus basically said he could compete for it, but right now Cody's our starter. It's
a numbers game, and that's unfortunate when it's not like bad play put him in this spot. It's the fact that he, got injured twice last year, and your best ability is your availability. I know as cliche as that sounds, but that's really what I think it boils down to here. He signed a 2-year contract with the Bears. I mean, Cody Whitehair, as we've talked about, they have to justify paying him that much in his salary cap hit, specifically this year, the second highest on the team. You have to play him, because otherwise you have somebody sitting on your bench who just is paid a heavy price to do so, and they don't want to do that. They think that Cody Whitehair gives them the best chance right now in moving him back to center, where we saw him play, prior to the 2022 season. And I think having someone like Lucas Patrick gives you options on the interior. We know injuries are prevalent along any offensive line, and to have somebody who has that inside versatility, whether they're playing a guard position, whether he's at right guard, whether he's playing center, that's a good spot for them to feel more comfortable knowing we have capable people and we're not going to be playing musical chairs. I mean, even Flus said it today that, they don't want to have to go back to what they were doing last year, where he didn't say musical chairs. He said like, moving people around, something like that. And I think it's important, because even everybody you talk to talks about this offensive line that we're seeing right now with Braxton Jones at left tackle, and then Tevin Jenkins left guard, Cody Whitehair center, Nate Davis at right guard, and help me here. Why am I blanking on the first round rookie?
Darnell Wright.
Darnell Wright. My brain is fried right now after being out here all day. When you hear people talk about like that's the unit, that is your offensive line.
Yes.
It's good, because you don't ever hear that, especially with this team around, the middle of June. And again, I'll go back to Justin Jones, because he brought up some really good points last year, that Braxton Jones had a great season for a rookie, despite the fact of like not knowing who all is going to be next to him. And oftentimes the left guard spot, I mean, yes, we know Cody Whitehair was there. He had the injury, and there were some more rotating parts, but like, what do you expect when you don't know who's going to be playing with you next to you on a week by week basis? Yeah. Now they do. Now they know there are veterans in this mix. It's not, you're relying on, your first round rookie, your 10th overall pick, and you expect him to be really good. And so far the reviews on him have been really, on Darnell Wright have been really good. And that's important, but to have some veterans with some experience and knowing that the pass protection is such a point of emphasis for this team, I think that's really important, that it's already starting to come together, and you won't have to tinker and mess with something that when you leave it in its place on June 15th at the end of minicamp and you come back at the end of July to pick it up, you expect that there won't be much drop off, and you can go into training camp with a step ahead instead of thinking that you have to use the first 2 weeks to figure out the best combination. The best teams are the ones that go in saying, all right, there's our left tackle through our right tackle. We know every single spot that's figured out. What you use training camp for then is to try to figure out the depth. Who's your swing tackle? Because that could be a pretty important competition. I mean, Alex Leatherwood, Larry Borum, those are some of the names that you expect to be in the mix for, those spots, because if they carry, 9 on the roster, 7, 8 on game day, like you've got to have versatility in that to know who can come in and where they can be most effective should injuries or anything else arise during the season.
What's happening with Alex Leatherwood? We've mentioned his name a couple of times this offseason. Is he working in? Is he like I feel like we have so many players on this Bears team where we're like, hey, is that guy still here? Like, is he still around on the team? Like, nobody talks about him.
That would be Larry Borum for me, frankly, because I know he's going into his 3rd season. He wasn't a high draft pick, but at one point last year he was projected to be the starter at right tackle. So I'm really curious to see what his role ends up becoming through training camp. Is he with, he'll be running with the 2s, but, is Alex Leatherwood able to beat him out for one of those tackle spots? And how does that shake out? There's 5, and then you think, okay, if they're going to carry 9, which I believe they, carry 9, you always have like 1 or 2 that you expect, one's usually it was Jatari Carter last year, but at least 1 that can go on the inactive list on game day, but then being able to carry 8 because of the injury concerns that you always have with that position. Finding those like next 3 beyond the 5 starters, you can pencil Lucas Patrick in as one of those guys, but then who is it? Is it an Alex Leatherwood? Is it Larry Borum? Is it Jatari Carter? There could be some interesting depth conversations about the competition that's going to happen at some of those backup spots. And the best teams are the ones that have depth along the offensive line that when it is called on to play, can come in and not feel like they're, playing at a completely different speed than everybody else on offense.
It's funny because, right, we're trying not to get overly excited, I should say, about everything that we're hearing out of there. But then I hear that the Bears have been practicing deep shots all through minicamp and into now opening day, or all through OTAs and now into opening day of minicamp. Does that seem to be the focus for the Bears right now, working through offensively on, creating that space, getting guys to play back so that Justin can finally be able to attack underneath?
Yeah, no, we saw a lot of that today, and it's interesting because DJ Moore has been that guy for this offense throughout the offseason. What we've seen, like he was running a lot of underneath routes today. It was Dante Pettis who had it was an absolutely perfectly placed ball from Justin Fields on the sideline and the threading the needle and Dante Pettis in this catch. It was nice to see because we know DJ Moore can do that. It's utilizing this time now with Mooney out, with Claypool not practicing, to figure out who else can contribute in that role. So today it was Dante Pettis. Who knows who it'll be on Wednesday and then again on Thursday. But they definitely have made it a point of emphasis about trying to stretch the field and what Flus was talking about. Like, I mean, you see so many defenses in single high. How are you going to attack that? Like, that's teams all but saying, we dare you to throw the ball deep on us. We dare you to try to attack some of the free zones that you see in the secondary. So utilizing this time now to try to figure out the best way to do that, so it's not uncomfortable and feels foreign to this offense in season, that's a good use of their time. So now figuring out who else is going to be part of that mix for the Bears is a good use of what we see on tap the next couple days.
I think probably the first 3 weeks, they're going to be able to get away with a lot of deep shots because the teams are going to realistically just be like, we got to cover Justin. Like, we don't think that he can throw. I think there's going to be that. Remember, I don't remember who the DB was that said it, but it was about Mitch, and they were just like, we're going to turn him into a quarterback. He's going to have to pass the football. I just don't think that. I think they'll try that in the beginning. I don't see that working in their favor because I've seen Justin's deep ball, and it's actually pretty accurate, contrary to the drops that we saw last season. So it'll be the opening weeks. I am excited to see. I am very excited about what this football team could be. Let's go on to the second quarter. Courtney, because we've talked about this offense a ton. There's a ton that we do want to get into even more with Justin Jones' comments and different things like that. But Nate Davis spoke, even though they didn't put that out for the YouTube side. I don't know what's going on with that. Did he speak before Flus?
Yeah, he was the first one to go today, so he got off off the bat off the practice field.
What did we hear from Nate Davis about his absence from OTAs? Is he coming in looking good, ready to go? What did you see today?
Yeah, not too much. I mean, he had mentioned that, why did you skip OTAs? And he came back last week, just to clarify. He only missed the first 2 weeks.
The first 2 weeks, yes.
It was, quote, normal routine for him. So whatever that means, he said he was able to get some off the field stuff taken care of. And for him now, I believe this is his 5th NFL season after 4. With the Tennessee Titans, it's getting his body right, his mind right, taking care of whatever that means off the field. It's always going to be a little interesting when a guy joins a team and isn't there from like day one of the offseason program. And it's his prerogative. He's healthy. He was practicing. I mean, remember, he had an injury late in the season last year, but he said today that he didn't have to have surgery. So again, a small piece of news, but considerable, because you don't want to think that the team signed somebody who was injured last year and is working back to off of injury and is supposed to be starting at right guard. I didn't know if we gleaned really all that much from Nate Davis. He's playing in a similar system, so it makes it easier for him to come in and to, assimilate in this offense, not feel like, oh man, I missed so much time. What we did learn from him, and I think it's just good to hear how he feels about Justin Fields. Like when he talked about like his command of the huddle, when I asked him about that, that was something that I think was like a big initial impression, because he said that the first thing he said is that, I asked him, what are your impressions of Justin Fields? Like, and how he commands the offense, commands the huddle, has a grasp on everything. He said he's a vet. Like, he's been around Ryan Tannehill. He compared, a lot of what he talked about today was Ryan Tannehill and his ability at quarterback and, his command of the huddle. And he saw a lot of that in Justin Fields. Now, he's never played a live down of football with Justin Fields yet. So we'll see what he thinks about it in a couple months. But it's a good sign that, Nate Davis is able to come in here after missing, a big portion of OTAs. And I know he said he's been locked in and he's been, in his playbook. He's able to stay in touch with teammates, but he just wasn't physically here. It sounds a lot like the Jalen Johnson situation, to be honest, where, it sounds like he had the capabilities to remain engaged. Now, whether that means being in meetings virtually or not, we don't really know, but it's better than the alternative where somebody like that is new to the offense, brand new scheme, and isn't here. I think this one isn't necessarily because he's here and he's already signed his contract. There's no real fear of anything that could play out, that could affect his availability as your starting right guard. And again, to see the early impressions of this offensive line and just going out there, seeing the same 5 guys in the order in which you expect them to be playing in is a pretty big deal. So, I mean, we've seen that, and that's what I expect to continue going forward. But, Nate Davis will have his chance, once they put pads on, to show, okay, this is what the type of player he is. This is how he looks in this offense. This is how he looks at that position. And it'll be good then to be able to see where Darnell Wright is, knowing that he's playing next to a veteran, and that's going to be somebody he relies on for communication and somebody who helps him through the inevitable rookie wall.
And that's a big question from it all, right? Like the only reason that I had concern about Nate Davis not being there, and is it going to affect it in the long run? Probably not, but I would have thought that it would have been great just to get that rapport with Darnell Wright early on. Again, he showed up for the third week of OTAs, so probably starting to build that relationship there. He's been in meetings, which means he's at least talking with them and hearing from them. But what did you see, right? How did that pairing look today? Again, no pads, you can't see a ton, but how does that pairing look? How does Darnell Wright look early on in this thing?
I think it looks what you expect it to look like. I mean, but we've said this about Darnell Wright that, first off, the size itself, that's among the first things that stands out to you. And he's a massive human being. So good that, he's going to have that attribute to like help himself, get into the NFL. And one thing Nate Davis said he's relayed to him about is speed of the game is going to be a lot different for you here. That for him as a rookie coming in with the Tennessee Titans was his first thing he had to overcome. And I know, even though like Darnell Wright played in a hurry up offense where you're getting like 80, sometimes 85 plays a game at Tennessee, you're on the field a lot and you're playing without breaks. You're not huddling. You're kind of, moving along very quickly. I'm curious to ask him 3 to 4 weeks into the season how he feels that helped him last year, and curious if it mattered at all or if it was just completely out the window because the NFL is really that much different than what he's going to expect, than what he played with in college. And, I do expect too that it's going to feel different because the type of edge rushers he's going to have to go against on a weekly basis, even though he came from the SEC. That is like you're facing the best of the best in the SEC more or less on a weekly basis for 17 games. So all of those things, Darnell Wright will have to go through this year. Good for him though. He's going to have Nate Davis, who went through this before. He's going to have Cody Whitehair, a long tenured veteran on this team. He's going to have Tevin Jenkins to lean on, who had to go through a full on position switch last year. And then of course, Braxton Jones just went through the rookie curve and played 100% of snaps at left tackle last year. If there's anybody that's walking into a situation where he's got, he can walk in and say, I'm comfortable with the guys that I have around me, that they're going to help me get to where I need to go. It's Darnell Wright, just because of like the amount of, experience that he inherits being part of that room and being the young guy. It is very hard to assimilate to an offensive line room where everybody, like if one person's out of sync, usually the coverage breaks down and it's something bad happens out of that. So you have to get on the same page as your teammates very quickly. I think he's going to be in a really good spot to do that because it's not like there's like 2 or 3 rookies or brand new players who have never played, had starting roles before, trying to figure it out on this offensive line. He's the one coming in who is going to have a lot of attention on him from players, from his other teammates and coaches to help get him up to speed if he's not there or doesn't feel like he's there and where he needs to be as quickly as he wants to be.
It's going to be, this offense as a whole, it's so, I don't know why this is weird to talk about, but it just feels weird where like there's guys that have been not only experienced in the league at these positions, but have actually been good at it. Like maybe that's just being a Bears fan for long enough, and it's just like, yeah, we got vets, but we could replace them if we wanted to. It just feels weird because it's like Nate Davis was a good right guard at his position. Cody Whitehair played well at center, right? Like you talk about all these different positions, and you see guys who were able to make an impact. Justin Jones actually talked about kind of even some of the impact that Justin Fields and DJ Moore are already putting out there. Let's listen in on that because the offense has me a little bubbly. I'm not gonna lie.
That 1 and 2 connection gonna be crazy this year. Him and DJ Moore, it's gonna be crazy this year. I'm gonna tell you that right now. I like what I see. DJ Moore is a great addition. He's made some amazing catches this OTAs, and it's just something that we haven't had here in a long time. That what I'm hearing. I've only been here a year, so something that we haven't had here in a long time. And I'm excited. He has somebody who can get open, who can run every route on the route tree. Can beat man, press, any type of coverage. You're throwing at him, double teams. He's running right by guys. Hitting them with double moves and We got guys to block for Justin Fields too. We just got our offensive tackle Darnell Wright, Nate Davis. The vets like that. You got vets like that on the line. It helps the young guys out. Especially last year. We're shuffling a lot of pieces around. We got Braxton with his rookie year last year. He had a pretty good year, but the O line moved around a lot, like piece wise, like new guys in and out the lineup. It's kind of hard for your rookie to really, I guess, excel when you don't really know who's playing by you the next week. But now you got a set O-line, you got these set vets, you got set people who's going to play with you. Coming this season, like sky's the limit for that room right there. And I'm excited for him, Justin Fields. I'm excited for the whole offensive side of the ball because it's going to be some real explosive plays where Justin doesn't have to use his legs.
So when you hear even the defensive guys getting giddy about this, what does that tell you about the improvements that the Bears have made this offseason and that connection between DJ Moore and Justin Fields already?
The reason I asked Justin Jones that question is because when we sat down, I thought back to Clocker cleanout day, January 9th or 10th, whatever day it was. And we asked him about, what did you learn about your starting quarterback? And it's, obviously football is a sport that's played in conjunction. My position affects your position, which affects another position. It's a 3-phase game. And but you typically don't hear a defensive player talk about the quarterback in such glowing terms the way that Justin Jones has talked about Justin Fields. Now, could it be the fact that they both have the Georgia connection, like they're both from there? I don't know. Clearly he pays attention to what's going on the other side of the ball. A lot of times you get guys who say, oh, I'm just trying to do my job. I'm just trying to move forward with it. But it's very clear that the success that Justin Jones and this defense expects to have is going to be predicated off of what you see on the offensive side of the ball. So when he says in January, this is a direct quote, once we start getting some more pieces around him and everything and start actually building a scheme for him that can really showcase every athletic talent he has, every ability that he has, it's going to be real dangerous out there. That's what he's saying when he's bringing up the DJ Moore thing and then that connection, which he sees more than we do because he's been here throughout the entirety of this offseason program. He's seeing it on a day-to-day basis, and it's sticking out to him. As a defensive player, you're supposed to be, in your mind, it's no, we've got to stop all that. The fact that there have been moments where that connection is clearly, beaten what the defense is trying to do, that's a really good sign that things are trending in the right direction. But I just think that this is somebody who understands the bigger picture here. It's going to take this defense improving a lot because at the end of the season last year, they completely failed on their own expectations, which was, playing football that, was respectable football. When you're giving up 400 yards a game in back-to-back, multiple weeks in a row, that's demoralizing and you don't want to be part of that. So what they're building here as far as the defensive side of the ball with a lot of the new pieces, especially position that affects him with all of the additions they made at defensive tackle. And he's open to that. He said, it's on me to bring along the young guys because that's what was done for me when I was a rookie and when I was in my early years in the NFL. Sometimes, if all goes according to plan, if it's the plan of, the front office, Gervon Dexter and Zach Pickens end up becoming starters one day. That would put Justin Jones out of a job. So you have to, if you're a player like that, you have to be secure in your abilities and confident that you can do what you need to do to keep your job at 3 technique this year, which Alan Williams said, or, about a month ago, Justin Jones is our 3 technique. Some of that could be posturing. Some of that could just be that at that point in time, you have 2 rookies. You're not just going to project a rookie's starting at any position. I mean, even the Bears were hesitant at first about Darnell Wright and just saying they didn't want to say, he's our starting right tackle. Look at what the Panthers did last week. It took them, I'm very proud of them as an organization in seeing the way that they handled it by saying, Bryce Young is QB1. That's just what you get with the rookie position, any rookie at any position. Teams typically don't want to go ahead and give them you're the guy who already earned it without playing any meaningful football. But that's kind of the approach I think the Bears have taken with Justin Jones. He's a critical part to making sure this interior part of the pass rush works because he's got to be the one bringing along guys that he will have to mentor, and hearing him talk about Zach Pickens and that he feels like he sees a lot of himself in him at a young age, that's good for the chemistry of that room. And it just can't be spoken of enough, because that's so important, that you have to have guys on the same page, and you start building it right now in the middle of June and hope that will carry over to training camp. By the time you get there, maybe there's a couple new additions on the defensive line, and maybe we know a little bit more of what this thing's going to look like and who's going to be where on the interior. But he plays a really pivotal role in making sure that whole thing happens.
Yeah, 100%. I want to keep talking about this defense as we go through to the third quarter. But first, Courtney, we've got halftime, my favorite time of every show. We get to talk about whatever we want to talk about at halftime. And Courtney, the Denver Nuggets are NBA champions for the first time ever. Yep. My question to you, twofold question, really. Right now, 2 MVPs, NBA Finals MVP, and a championship ring. Where do you have Nikola Jokic ranked among all-time centers? Because I think these are all-time accomplishments at this point. And how the heck do we rank Jimmy Butler, somebody who's dragged multiple teams to the NBA Finals, that we both just go, what? How the heck? I don't know how y'all got there, but cool.
To answer your first question, this is going to be one that we debate all summer, because with the NBA Finals being over on June 12th, there's a lot of time until training camp and until free agency, when we start seeing pieces move around. So the Nikola Jokic, is he top 5 at his position all time? I would put him in there, looking at what he's done and how he's revolutionizing it and showing no signs of slowing down. He's a big man who plays, not just with his back to the basket, like he can shoot. And it's so cool hearing the story of how, him coming over from Serbia and being a raw prospect and, poking fun at himself for like his weight and all of these things, to watch him develop maybe into the best player that's currently playing in the NBA is wild. And I think there's still some like non-believers out there, which is, if you're in that boat, did you watch the NBA Finals? Did you watch the playoffs? This team was incredible for the last 2 months, and they just swept through the entire series, and there's a reason they were the 1 seed and how good they were all season long. So now you have a team that shows no sign of slowing down. Remember that trade that they made with Oklahoma City the other day to get more draft capital, because the way that CBA is going to be coming through, and you have to like factor in the luxury tax and in the players that down the line, the Jamal Murray's, Michael Porter Jr.'s, Nikola Jokic, again, you're going to have to pay. So they want to go about the draft and develop route, so they can become this era's version of the 99 Spurs with Tim Duncan and all of the players that were brought in to San Antonio and developed through Pop's system. That's who this Denver Nuggets team could be. So yeah, I'd put Jokic top 5 centers all time. And that's not recency bias. I mean, he's 2-time MVP before now, just in case you're forgetting. 2-time MVP. And on top of that, now an NBA Finals champion, an NBA Finals MVP, and very well could have won the MVP this year. I think there was a lot of voter fatigue just with, this guy in Denver who's on a very, non-flashy team, doesn't have the endorsements, isn't the big name, like winning it again, I think certainly factored into why, some voted for Joel Embiid over him this year. But I'm excited to see what's next. I'm excited to see them push to contend again and for future years too. That puts the Warriors on notice. That puts the Lakers on notice. Certainly the Suns and all the investments that they made on the offensive side of the ball. It's not just a runaway division with like the star power. Now you have a team that's like built the right way. And I know that's a little cliche, but take a look at the sustainability effect with, a team that, they get Aaron Gordon, and instead of making him forcing him into a role where he feels like he has to be the number 1, the best player, he's the 3rd best player on this team. And it clearly works. The guy was a number 4 pick in the NBA draft, like not that long ago. And look at where he's at now. It's the right fit. Coaching matters. All those things factor in to why this team was so good. But I am very excited to see how they go about like trying, like what their draft strategy is, how they try to build around the core that they already have. Because with a team like that in the series that was never really in question, save for that insanely dumb call last night in the 4th quarter. And if whether you want to think the NBA is rigged or not, I mean, there's your prime example of, man, they really wanted this to go to 6 so it could go back to Miami. It was never close. But Jimmy, I can't fault him. Like, God, it's too little too late. Like some of the shots he made in the fourth quarter, I'm like, where was that 2 quarters ago? And he ran out of gas. I would not be surprised. And I don't know anything. I'm just like kind of speculating here. I would not be surprised if we hear, hey, Jimmy Butler had to undergo surgery for the ankle or had a procedure for a cleanup. He was grimacing towards the end. You could tell he was in some considerable pain. And the fact that he got his team to Game 5 of the NBA Finals without Tyler Hero and the offensive explosion that they get from him, which helps their volume. They are a team that needs volume shooting because they were, I believe, 8-4 ahead of yesterday when they won the battle of shooting more, and they were 3-5 when they didn't. So I don't know what this team's going to look like if they get Damian Lillard or some other point guard to Kyle Lowry could end up towards retirement. Like either way, they need depth in their backcourt. They're going to be a dangerous team, and they'll still probably be in the mix for the years to come.
They're so hilarious to me because it's just like that. we always do like a live call of the finals over on the Breeze, and so we're calling it, and I was just like, Jimmy Butler to Strus just sounds gross. Like I'm not gonna lie to you, like every time he would pass the ball to somebody, I was like, my God, it just sounds bad. Like you gotta get some shooters on this team. I think I said
Strus was horrible last night. I don't know what happened. He's been
horrible the entire finals. Like he hasn't been good, and I think I'm gonna be honest with you. I looked at that and I was like, this is like the Kobe AI finals. Like that's what this felt like to me. Like you're not supposed to be here. Mm-hmm. Credit to you for getting here. This is absolutely a feather in your cap that your team is here. You're gonna lose, but you're not supposed to be here. And that's tough. As a Bulls fan, I love Jimmy. I wanted Jimmy to compete a little bit more.
Yeah, I did too. I wanted him I would love to have seen him win, and what a story that would have been as an 8 seed going all the way to the finals and winning it. But there's no shame in their game that they just fell off at the end. They pushed their talent as far as they could possibly go. And we'll see what Boston looks like next season, because they've got a lot of decisions they have to make this off season, particularly with Jaylen Brown and, who they want to pay. And, what does Milwaukee look like? They got a brand new coach. Are they going to keep Chris Middleton? Are they going to keep Brooke Lopez? Like the East could be a little bit more open in this offseason than we've seen it in the last couple of years.
Hey, AK, you hear that? Just keep that in mind. That's all I'm saying. He put together the championship team. We got to be patient, Bulls fans. That's all I say on that. He literally built this entire team and it was like, all right, I'll see y'all later. Oh, man, let's get back into some football talk, though. This is what the people came for. Let's get into the third quarter here. As we were talking about the defense, I think as training camp and OTAs has gone on, or not training camp, minicamp and OTAs has gone on, I'm feeling better about kind of the pieces that we have on the defensive end. Not to say we're not still missing pieces, but at least the pieces here feel like the right pieces in the right position at this point. Hopefully, right, that continues to show itself. But Justin Jones talked about on the defensive end, or just the culture in the room and how he kind of talked about what this team was. Let's listen in on that, because I thought this was actually a little bit surprising.
Different locker room than it was last year. I'll tell you that. And obviously now the season's over, we got a lot more guys who are more team oriented versus, themselves. When you got a bunch of guys that are on 1-year deals and they're all worried about what they're going to be next year, it's kind of hard to really build a tight group. But when you got guys here who are going to be here for 3 years, 4 years, 2 years, like guys who really want to come in here and win, like that's when you start really cooking with fire, because now you got talented players and you got guys that want to be here and want to play for the Bears, and it's going to be a good deal.
What the heck? I thought everybody was kumbaya last season. I thought everybody loved each other and it was a great culture, even though they were losing. What's going on with the culture?
That was an interesting answer. When I asked him that question, I was not expecting the whole 1-year guys on 1-year deals just trying to get paid. I wasn't expecting that sort of response, because he had hinted at, look, we went through hell last year. Like they traded our captain, Roquan Smith, at the deadline, and they traded Robert Quinn, and you lose Eddie Jackson, and you're like piecemealing this roster together. Like you went through challenges, so you'd think that all of those challenges would make the unit stronger. But then he's like, oh, it's a completely different locker room. We've got guys who want to be here. We've got guys who, he didn't really give you the perspective that like the trial by fire brought this room closer together. Yeah. It almost made it sound like the trial by fire, weeded out some of the, I don't want to say bad apples, but like weeded out some of the pieces that just were not meant to be part of this rebuild. And, there I'm not going to name names, but it's like, you can I don't know who he was talking about, but there were several guys here that were on 1-year deals that are no longer, and several players who were on, I believe, multi-year deals. And, someone who played alongside him, Al-Qadim Muhammad, was somebody that they cut like in January. I believe he had another year left on his contract. So again, I don't know if he was referring to anybody in specific or not, but it was a pretty telling answer. I mean, he was not one to mince words today, talking about how much he does not like Packers fans when he was asked about the state of the division. And, this comment about how different the locker room is this year. And he's a newer guy. He's only been here 1 year. He's been able to establish himself as one of the more vocal leaders on this team, playing a very pivotal role, playing a lot of football, a lot of snaps for this team. So he kind of has a right to, his voice carries weight when he says something like that, as somebody who, has been part of this team, went through the 3-14 season, and now he's the one who can accurately tell us how different things are. Yeah. I think that that's something that makes your antenna go up, because you're like, whoa, that's like, it maybe sheds light on how bad things were internally and within this locker room, that at the end of the season last year, maybe it wasn't as great as they were painting it out to be. Because if you're talking about human nature, how can it be? How can it be enjoyable to come to work when your team's 3-14 and your defense is just awful on a week-to-week basis at the end of the season? And it feels like guys are making business decisions, and sometimes it feels like guys are stalling in their progression and learning how to play football in this defense. So I thought that was a pretty eye-opening comment.
I was sitting there, I was like, man, and then it was Eddie Jackson, right? Eddie Jackson kind of said the same thing as well. I was like,
and Eddie's been here 7 years now, so he's got a completely different perspective, seeing a lot of turnover from a lot of different locker rooms.
Yeah, I thought that, I guess you can't expect everything to be right hunky-dory, everybody's happy in a 3-win season. But they certainly made it seem that way last season. Yeah. Maybe that's just a great job by the coaching staff saying we're keeping everything in-house. Nothing's going to get out. Now, guys are gone. Now you see these players taking a little bit of shot. I kind of like it. I'm not going to lie. I did too. I really appreciated the honesty with it. And that's stuff that lets you know, okay, if it feels that different, and what Eddie was saying, that, it's year 7 for him, that coming off the injury, this is not the first time he's been injured. Your window is right now. And that really is a motivating factor for somebody whose season was cut short 12 weeks in last year. And you don't have time to waste. You don't have this window to waste. And it speaks to the bigger picture of Justin Fields is in year 3. I know everything kind of comes back to the quarterback, but that's the way it is in the NFL. Yeah. You put all these pieces around him. It better work out this year. It better show you massive signs of growth. Otherwise, there could be some pretty significant changes coming to some of the more important positions on this team. And if you take it seriously, especially starting now when you're trying to build something so you can set your habits by the time you get back from, summer vacation, break, whatever it is, for training camp, then it's full steam ahead. You don't have time to set anything then. So when you get guys doing the buy-in right now, that shows you how quickly things can go and how quickly things can feel like they're actually sticking when everybody gets back together at late July. Yeah. And I mean, we heard from Eddie. We talked about Eddie. Eddie talked about his return, I should say, and how he kind of just, worked his way back into this thing, how excited he is to be back out on the field. Let's listen in on that real quick.
That was the goal, to get back, in time for vet minicamp, just to be out there with the guys, get that chemistry back. You got a lot of new faces. especially on the defensive side of the ball. So, just want to go out there and be able to build that chemistry early.
What you all have to do to get back and be ready to go already?
Just work. It's a lot of work. I haven't had a time off, no vacation time. I've been here since the injury. Me, Mooney, Jack Sanborn, we all been in here, grinding, and sticking it out with each other. So, just to see, Jack came back first and it was like, oh yeah, I gotta hurry up. Then now Mooney feeding off me, me coming back. So, just coming in, putting the extra time in, and just staying focused, trying to get back with the team.
Eddie, when did you know you weren't going to have surgery?
I was in the boot for the first, let's say 4 to 6 weeks or 6 to 8 weeks or something like that. And I went back and seen Doc in Wisconsin, and he told me it was healing fine, so no surgery was needed. And, that was a big blessing. We kind of felt like I wasn't going to need it because I was, recovering pretty fast and everything. So the pain went down, the swelling went down pretty fast. I did have like a lot of bruising, so we kind of felt like that. Then when we got the news, I was so excited.
What have you seen from Eddie out there? I mean, he's excited about his return. We saw him, we heard that he was doing some light work out there. Is he kind of getting himself back into where the Bears are looking for him to be heading toward training camp?
Yeah, the window for him to get back at minicamp was really important because he's been rehabbing since, he doesn't have to have the surgery. He's in the walking boot. That was, the Sunday after Thanksgiving. So late November, I remember when we were doing locker clean out, we see him still like on the scooter with the walking boot. Fast forward, a couple weeks, he goes to get evaluated and he says, "Hey, I don't need surgery." God, what a sigh of relief. Yeah. Because as a safety and a cornerback, like as a defensive back, you have to plant and backpedal. And to not have a surgically repaired foot, knowing that like you're going to have to overcome all these other like obstacles to get back to doing that and cutting and pivoting and flipping your body, all these things at a very high level, taking a surgery element out is huge. And he's out there right now. Yeah. Maybe not at full speed, but he's still practicing a lot. And I think that like the way that he's worked to get back, it's something Matt Eberflus has talked about pretty glowingly. He deserves a lot of credit because the amount of work that he threw into his rehab, again, you hear him talk about like the windows right now. I don't have time to waste. And he's on a mission to prove, he's worthy of his contract. I mean, that's always kind of been the ancillary storyline around someone like Eddie Jackson, because there is some criticism. Hey, like you signed the big deal in 2000 ahead of the 2020 season. And then, last year you saw him get back to that version, version that got himself paid. And now it's what's the next step for him beyond this? That's what he's geared towards. And the injury hiccup, you hope for him, and he hopes is just a hiccup and that it won't be something that limits him. So him being back now it's a really good sign that things going forward, like he'll continue to make sure that his rehab, like it just sounds like he's not in the training room nearly as much as he had to be before. So who knows what that means as far as like more work he has to do there. But I think you've got somebody who feels like they've really like been given kind of a second lease on this thing and really wants to capitalize on it.
Yeah, we heard him talk about him, Mooney, Sanborn all being in there working all offseason. Mooney, of course, they look like they're targeting him for training camp. Sanborn kind of in that similar area. So I like how he said, they are all fed off of each other, right? Jack able to come back, boom, now I got to get back. Okay, Mooney's feeding off of me. It feels like this team, and maybe this is cliche to say, but it feels like this team actually, unlike the culture apparently last season, does like each other, does like working with each other, does like being on the field. That's a huge thing for me heading into training camp because these relationships are already built, trying to go into a season where you're trying to change winning culture here.
Yeah, and it matters. It absolutely matters. And when you have guys who are all motivating each other through the rehab process, it's a small group, and thankfully for the team's sake, it's a small group that you didn't have a whole ton of season-ending injuries that require a lot of off-season work, because that means you have more guys on the field. And to have, today, Matt Eberflus said, even if you didn't see guys out there, they had full attendance, which means that if you don't see guys out there, and there are just a couple, like not a lot of big names, Jalen Holmes was one of them. Joe Reed was somebody, a wide receiver they signed who is working through something. Chase Allen. But even like the Chase Claypools of the world, like they're all here. They're all working through whatever the injuries are, their respective injuries. And you don't have the element of, oh, well, are we expecting a holdout or somebody who's not happy and doesn't want to be here? It's a better sign than the alternative to actually have the players here and to have them working towards getting back healthy on the field.
Now, let's get into this fourth quarter, because the fourth quarter is probably the most interesting quarter we have on this show. Because especially with Justin Jones's comments now, right? Like about Packers fans, a certain city that's a lot closer to more Packers fans throwing its hat in the ring for the Bears Stadium. Waukegan, right next to my hometown of North Chicago. Shout out to Lake County. Bang, bang. We out here trying to get into the mix on the Bears Stadium, actually sending a letter to Kevin Warren, the mayor of Waukegan, detailing why Waukegan would be a great spot, some great lakefront property, all the things that they would be able to provide for the Bears. Courtney, is there any realistic way that the Bears are going to Waukegan?
I mean, any city at this point that thinks they could potentially have the bandwidth for an NFL franchise like the Bears, who are looking to build a new stadium, are going to build a new stadium, and they're hoping that like they get it done. Like, this is like, they see what's happening in Arlington Heights.
Yeah.
Last I checked, the Cook County assessor has not lowered the tax valuation on that land. So the Bears for right now are going to be open for business. So this would prompt every city to go ahead and make the pitch. And Waukegan's pitch was, hey, we're 20 minutes away from where the Bears currently are in Lake Forest. There are a lot of players who live up that way. Yeah. And the lakefront property, the opportunity to build something that could host not only Bears games, but like they put it in there, other events and, an entertainment district, the state-of-the-art stadium, a development there. It's a leverage play. I don't believe the Bears are going to be playing in Naperville, Waukegan, or even in Chicago much longer. Yeah. At some point, something's going to have to give with Arlington Heights. But Arlington Heights is saying, they're probably trying to stay firm here and be like, well, look, we valued the land. The tax assessment on this land is such, and we know that you're going to continue tearing down the grandstand and continue trying to develop the land for something because you own it now. It's not like the Bears don't own this property. They closed on it and they're working towards making it viable to build a stadium on. But in the meantime, they're, keeping their options open. It's the smart strategy. It's the strategy that leads to a lot of interesting conversations about, well, what if they went here? What if, this city got in the mix? Are we going to all of a sudden see cities that we're in the mix before, like Gary, Indiana, just try to pop in and give the Bears something to consider. The Bears should consider this, but I don't know how serious many of these offers are, like as far as like how seriously the team's considering it, because everything has been so geared towards Arlington Heights. They did say in the statement, their sole focus is no longer on Arlington Heights because of what's happening financially with what they're expecting taxpayers, the burden that's going to be on them. Does this mean that everything's going to fall through and Arlington Heights is going to be out? No, but it does give you something to consider if you are this organization trying to think about what's the best way to get this thing done in a financial way that isn't going to put a massive burden on, whatever community they're building in, because that's what's going to be required. Fans and non-fans alike. Anybody who's in the surrounding area is going to be paying for a lot of the infrastructure to make sure the stadium can be there in the first place, while the Bears are privately funding the stadium. I think we should make a wager on this though. Like, what's going to be the next stadium? What's going to be the next city that ends up getting involved? Like, what about Rockford? Rockford seems like a great place. I mean, there's highways there. Some of the infrastructure is already there. It's definitely not in Chicago. That one's much further out. I don't know how you sell that as like being part of Chicago. You might as well be like the Rockford Bears at that point. But
Romeoville, maybe? Is Romeoville getting any love on the stadium front? I mean,
they've got room.
They've got plenty of space. I think that's the funny thing about like Waukegan too. Like when you look at some of these spots, it's like Arlington Heights to me was cool, but I was like, you're going to have to tear down a lot of stuff. Like Arlington Heights is
no natural place where it's like, wow. Yeah. Like, I mean, outside of Churchill Downs Incorporated, which owned which owned Arlington Park, there really wasn't any like space. You're like, oh, that would be a good site for a stadium.
Yeah, so I think you're gonna have to tear down a lot of stuff. Waukegan, like, there's stuff to tear down. Like we used to literally like sneak into like the little factory thing along the lakefront just because there was nothing there. It was empty. So like there's space to tear stuff down. Romeoville, maybe. Rockford would be tough. Like you're gonna house the Ice Hogs and the Chicago Bears in the same city. Like that'd be wild.
Yeah, I guess I don't know who would have the upper hand there. I mean, God, you brought the Rockford Ice Hogs into this, so it's interesting. I don't think that these will be the last two cities that we hear of, and not that Chicago had a meeting, not that Mayor Brandon Johnson had a meeting specifically about the stadium. We can infer that, but there was nothing that like came through like with a full unofficial bid of stay here. New leadership in the city of Chicago will give you a better proposal for Soldier Field. Yeah. But I bet by the time the summer's over, a month from now, we might have like 2 or 3 more different names that come into the mix trying to entice the Bears to go there.
It's going to become that like in hip hop when somebody throws out a diss track to like all of hip hop and then like random people who weren't even brought up in it start dropping diss tracks. It's like, okay, like nice track, but we weren't actually paying attention to you. We don't need that. We didn't need that. We didn't. I was like, who did that? Kendrick, when Kendrick did, I can't think of the diss track with J. Cole. Or with Big Sean, I should say. And then like Lupe Fiasco dropped the diss track back. I was like, come on, Lou. We didn't. Yeah. He was like, I wasn't mentioned. It was like, okay, all right, you got it. But I think this is all going to get very interesting. At the end of the day, like you said, does this more than likely finish in Arlington Heights, though?
I would be hard pressed as of right now to say it does not.
Yeah.
It makes sense that the Hail Mary opportunities are coming in, but at the end of this, there's going to be some sort of push. Like, let's say there's like really no like change in what's going forward with the Chicago Bears and, Arlington Heights. There's going to have to be something that kind of tips the conversation in one direction, because you can't just have like this stalemate. Right. Either the Bears would have to take one of these other cities seriously, or they'd have to somehow find the funding to cover the costs that they were not anticipating, or push that through to see whether they can get taxpayers of that area to fund it, which is a big ask. But I am just confident that this saga will not be closed for a minute, and this could very well delay the process of getting the stadium built. We don't know, but until we hear one way or another where the Bears are going forward, any city that has the capability, or even if you don't, just throw a Hail Mary and see if they would take a meeting with you.
Hey, North Chicago, get in the mix, man. You still got Chicago in the name. We also have a lakefront. We got plenty of stuff to tear down. Don't worry about it. Hey, man, appreciate you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Chicago Bears podcast. Bears-Packers games in Waukegan would be wild, though. That would be crazy. I would love that. I'm not going to lie.
Much closer for Packers fans. I mean, it's not all that much closer. Waukegan's right below the Wisconsin border, so I guess it's a little closer.
That's right on the other side of Kenosha, basically. I mean, you got Zion and then Waukegan, so yeah. But hit that like button, subscribe to the page. Let us know how you guys are feeling in the comments below. Drop a bird down if you made it all the way to the end, man. Let us know you're a real Bears fan out here. Appreciate all the love as always. For Courtney Cronin, this your boy Pat the Designer, back at it again. Y'all stay safe out there, Chicago. Peace.